So I'm out here on my land here, just doing some work, getting things done. And last night I went out with some friends and we had some discussions on things, and there were some things that kind of struck a chord, and I wanted to go over some of those ideas that we talked about, because I feel that it's pretty important for us to know, you know, how things work and sort of take things apart, you know. And so I try not to get political on anything that I do, and I'm not going to go into politics, but it's, you know, might kind of waver in there a little bit, and I just want everybody to understand that that's not really the point of this. Okay, so what I'm going to talk today about is the idea of empowerment, right? And what real, actual empowerment is, and how empowerment works, because it's a term in our modern world that gets abused a lot. It's something that people try to act like is something that is, you know, this motivating force. They go, oh, you're going to be empowered. If you just do this, you'll be empowered, and all this stuff. And what it does a lot of times is people just end up getting exploited, or they just, you know, they're saying things that they say are empowering them, but they're actually taking their power away from them, and they just don't realize it, right? Now, I'll start by saying that, you know, we see terms and words and stuff getting manipulated and twisted and changed all the time in modern society. That's what modernists like to do. They like to see if they can reinvent the wheel, create new terms, change old terms, do what they want to in order to fit an agenda or an ideology or something like that, right? And the thing is with that, why that happens, what takes place there is, it's all marketing. Like everything that you're talking about, everything that people see when they're looking at TV or looking at, you know, social media or stuff like that, it's all marketing. Everything is marketing. I tell people all the time that, you know, propaganda is advertisement for government, and, you know, advertisement is propaganda for corporations. That's what it is, you know. So when you understand that, you understand marketing techniques and how people sort of do things, you know, with this, how they take these psychological manipulations and they get you to do something. That's what advertisement is. That's what propaganda is, and that's how that works. Because what they're trying to do is they want to create a message, they want to create a video, they want to create a slogan, something that will get you as a consumer or as a citizen or as just a person of interest that they want to make something happen with. They're going to, you know, use psychology and use sociology in a way that'll either benefit you or hurt you, right? And what happens is, you know, these messages become successful, and when the messages become successful, they, you know, they push them and push them and push them, and that's how these things continue to build and grow and grow and grow and grow and build. And so, like, you think of it like, with music, you know, where you have, for some reason, there's tons of music out there, and most of the music out there nobody's ever even heard of. You know, I would say probably like 80% of the music out there no one's ever listens to, or a very small niche of people listen to and enjoy, and it's not something that the greater audience like even connects to. And but you have like this small selection of music, this small, you know, tiny bit of music that becomes this mass phenomenon, and people love it, and they'll like fall before the musicians. And, you know, you see like some of the old videos and stuff, like people would be taking their clothes off and just freaking out and going crazy, and, you know, and it's just because like this song resonated with them in such a way that it became the message for them. It became something that they lived their lives around. They built their entire identity around it. And that message it's all marketing. Like, that's what it is. You know, it's the getting the message out, getting it out there, and getting it pushed in a way that makes people feel connected to it and feel an emotion behind it and feel like it's something that makes them, you know, have a better life or something like that. Even if it's not real, even if it's completely an illusion. And a lot of times it is. It's an illusion, because these people, most of these people who are putting out these messages about you, and these for you to actually improve about you, and these for you to actually improve you, what they're doing, they want power, or they want something that benefits themselves, you know, and at like, musicians all the time say, oh, I love my fans. Well, of course they love their fans. Their fans made them rich and they made them popular and they put them in the position that they're in. So those things mean something to them. And obviously I'm not saying it's nefarious or wrong. It's just the way things are. And so the thing about that is that when you're considering these things, you always have to consider like the motivations behind messages and the motivations behind the things that people do when they're saying things, when they're coming up with an idea or a slogan or some kind of, marketing plan or a commercial or something that gets popular or something that's funny or cute or inspiring or something like that. What is the motivation behind it? And sometimes, the motivations are perfectly fine and they're perfectly clear and they're not trying to hurt anybody or anything like that. Some of it's for charity or whatever, and that's perfectly fine. But the one thing that I'm here to talk about is to discuss the idea of empowerment, right? Because the word empowerment is one of these things that's used and abused in this sense that it is just nothing but a marketing slogan for various ideologies or industries or different things where they tell you basically to continue saying that things are empowering when in actuality what they're doing is they're stripping you of your power. They're completely taking your power away. One of the things that I would say is probably one of the most prominent would be feminism, right? And I'm not gonna, like I said, I don't wanna get into politics. I'm not gonna, start a war with feminists or anything like that. Talking about empowerment in a way, because feminists use that word a lot. They like to say empowerment, this empowers women, empowers them. And then, but what it comes down to is, what is your definition of power? What does power mean to you, right? How do you have power when you're isolated? How do you have power when you have nothing? You don't have people around you who are willing to fight and die for you. You don't have a cause that's going to bolster you up. A lot of times what it ends up with is that people say things are empowering when really all it does is give them money, and money can equate into power sometimes. Most of the times it doesn't. It's just, like I know people who are millionaires, and because they're not involved in politics or anything like that, they don't have any power because of it. They might have some more influence and they could maybe work their way into getting power because of it, but it's just money. And so like the message that we try to push and the ideas that we try to push are that the only thing that gives you power, real power on a local level, something you personally can do to take power for yourself, something that's really actually empowering, is to have a family. And I'm dead serious about that, because this was the mode of gaining power for people for centuries. That's what they did. Literally, most of the things we see in these ancient cultures and ancient religions and stuff like that, and I've studied this, quite extensively, is everything was built around growing the family and growing the clan and growing the local community and making it stronger and more indefensible, something where they could defend themselves against any opponent. And the more people they had, the more families they had connecting, the more, houses that they brought into clans and stuff like that, the more power they had. And the reason why that gives you power is because you have direct influence over it, right? Now, in our modern world, people think that ideology is going to replace that. And I got to tell you that ideology is nothing, all right? Ideology is words on a piece of paper. That's all it is. It literally is just that. And those words can change here and there. People can interpret it differently. People say, well, doesn't mean it can literally just be anything you want it to be, right? And so when you have that idea that, an ideology, and you always see these people like creating a new ideology every day. I'm an anarcho-fascist, communist, leftist, rightist, blah, 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 just on and on and on. They just constantly make these ideologies because they think that those ideologies are going to save the world or save them or stop what's happening and all this stuff. And it's like, the only reason why these things happen is because people lose control of their localized government, or they surrender it to a larger government, a larger system, and they lose their local power. And that's it. You know, and I've talked before in videos before, and I've talked to people, you know, using examples of that, like during the Great Depression, when they would have penny auctions and stuff like that. You know, those were when communities were very strong, very localized, and worked together. And so what would happen is the banks would come in and they would, you know, they would try to buy up somebody's land, or they would take the land from them. They'd say, well, you haven't paid your mortgage or whatever, and we're going to take the land from you. And people are like, man, this land has been in their family for generations, and you're not just going to come take their land from them. And, you know, they would go up there and they would go up to the auction when they start auctioning it off. And they say, look, you're going to sell this land back to this person for a penny. And if anybody dares to try to bid on it other than this person, we're going to take you out and hang you, right? They had police officers who would, the police who would come in, and they knew which police officers, which ones were, you know, working for big banks, corporations being bought off and stuff like that. They knew, because they knew the difference in what they did and how they acted. So when those cops would come in and try to arrest people for not being able to pay their bills or something like that, then, you know, the people would beat the crap out of that officer and arrest him. You know, that's what happens, because that's what happens when you have a strong local community with local families coming together saying, we're not going to put up with this, right? And people just don't think that. And they're sitting there saying, this is empowering. What I'm doing is empowering you to do what? You know, to get more money, to have a bigger house? That's not empowerment. That's materialism, right? You don't have power. It doesn't matter how much money you have. If the government decides that they want to come in and stomp you, they will stomp you, because you're isolated, because you're alone, because you're not surrounded by people who are strong and willing to defend you, right? And see, and people think, well, we're past that. We don't need clans and tribes. That's all old stuff, right? But the fundamental principle of a tribe or a clan is that you build a family nucleus that you have influence over, and that spreads out further and further and further. And that the people who devote their lives to the clan and to the tribe are people who are strong, and they're willing to fight, and they're willing to die for it, okay? Now, us in civilization, everybody in society today don't have that, right? Governments still do. They never stop doing that. And they trick you into doing it. They're like, you should stop doing that, right? But they surround themselves with strong people who are willing to fight and die for them, right? And they train those people, and they give them weapons, and they send them across the world to go kill other people, to train them to get that, you know, thirst for blood. And then then if you ever challenge them or question them, they just turn that rabid dog on you. And then you have no defense, you have no protection, you have no way to save yourself, you have no one who cares. And like your neighbors, you know, if you're the ATF or FBI shows up at your house and decides to just throw you in a gulag somewhere, what's anybody gonna do? You know, they might complain about it on Facebook, whatever, you know. That's what we're talking about with the balance of power. Having money doesn't do that, you know. And you have to ask yourself right now, look in the mirror, you know, do I have that defensive capability? Nobody does. I don't care how much money you've got, you know. Even some of these wealthy people who live in, like, you know, Martha's Vineyard or whatever, you know, they have a lot of power, and it's very unlikely that they would get messed with. But if they decided to, they would, you know. I mean, look what happened with Trump, you know, and look what happens to other rich people. If the system decides it wants to take you down, it's going to take you down, you know, and that's that. And there's going to be, you know, there's been people who've gone to prison. There have been people who've had their lives ruined. They've had, I mean, having the money doesn't necessarily mean that you're safe, you know. And so that's the point of it, is that you have to build strong, large families. And that's the only way you can empower yourself. Everything else is a slogan. Everything else is a lie. Everything else is a bunch of people trying to sell you something, literally, you know, and there's no way anybody can argue against that. That is an undeniable fact, with a mountain of evidence in our modern world demonstrating that on a daily basis, right? And, you know, so people have to really start questioning their life choices. They have to start questioning, like, what am I doing with my life? What's the point of all this, you know? Am I supposed to be isolated? Am I supposed to just be alone? Or should I, you know, start working to bring families together who think like me, who work like me and act like me, and who want to be connected in a way that is familial, not just like an organization or a fellowship, but something where it's like our families are now one, you know. And they had lots of ways of doing that in ancient times. They had marriages or adoptions. Some people would foster the other people's kids. They would perform blood brotherhood rites. That was probably the most prominent one. And stuff like that were just made so that the families became a single family or a clan. The house was like the nucleus of it, and then it spread out into clans and into tribes and stuff like that. And once that happens, this isn't just a game. This isn't like some LARPy thing where we're all dressing like we live in the 10th century. No, it's literally like we will die for this. This is what we are. This is who we are. And the thing is that people have become so lulled to sleep by television and entertainment and sports and stuff like that, that they just all of these things just kind of went away like with a whisper. They just vanished, and there was no more community, and it's all gone. And like your community is like some club you're a part of, some group that you're connected to that has nothing to do with anything, with people who aren't taught or trained to die for each other. Even like soldiers and stuff like that. You see a lot of the movements today, the ex-veterans and stuff like that. It's like when they're not fighting for the system, a lot of times you see it's like every man for himself, And then people say it's like no man left behind when they're fighting for the state, but when they're fighting for the, in the streets against people who are trying to destroy their country, it's like, well, you got shot in the face yesterday, and I guess that's okay because the cops arrested him, And it's like, that's like, what is that? So you have to build a movement of people who are willing to die for each other, who are blood loyal to each other, And how you do that is up to you, but you got to do it. Because if you don't have power, other people will. Nature abhors a vacuum. And there is no such thing as a vacuum in nature. Someone will always fill the gap, always. And what's going to happen is the people who have the strength, who have the power, who don't have your interests at heart, who want to hurt you, they're always going to take in that role. Always, because it's about their self-interests. They don't care about you, and why would you expect them to? That's the thing I can't stand about celebrity worship or, worship of parties or politicians or whatever. It's like, what motivation do these people have to care about you? They don't. They have none. Zero. There's no reason for them to care about you. I don't care which side they're on. I don't care if you're on your side or your opponent's side or whatever. Why would they care about you? Give me a list of reasons why they would care about you. They don't know you. They have no idea who you are. They are there doing something that they feel benefits themselves. And that's it. Every last one of them, because that's what happens, And so when you're looking at, previous reigns and tyrannies and stuff like that, dictators, monarchs, republics that went crazy and stuff like that, all of these different things you see throughout history, the one connecting factor that they all have, because people try to blame it on the ideology. It's on the system. It's the system they created is wrong. We'll make a better system. And it's like, no, it's not the system. What it is it's people separated from the culture, from the local community, who live in an ivory tower, and they start going crazy because they're isolated from the world, and then they become, tyrants. And it doesn't matter what system you create. It doesn't matter, As long as that is allowed to happen, as long as you're talking about people who get to play with infinite amount of wealth, just play with it like it's a game, their whole perspective on everything is going to be lost. And they're going to start working for themselves, and they're not going to work for you. And it doesn't matter if they're a king or a congressman or a whatever, right? They are going to work for themselves always. They don't care about you. They have no reason to care about you. You shouldn't expect them to care about you. The expectation of having them care about you is ridiculous. Like, I wouldn't walk up to a stranger and be like, hey man, do you care about me? You should really care about me. You should make sure that, I'm fed and my family's taken care of, because why? That's the same thing you do with celebrities and politicians. You should care about me. Why? What reason do they have? Now they'll tell you they do because they're trying to sell you something. And so there's only one way, one road to empowerment. And that's big families, big clans, big influence. Look at like the Mormons in Utah, that's what they do. And they run that entire state because of it. And you can't mess with them because of that, because they have huge families. They build a lot of influence networks. They know exactly what they're doing, and they run the show over there. And that's how it's done. And you can't go in there and mess with those people because of it, you know? And it's like, you can see the difference. And it's not about like, oh, this ideology is wrong or that ideology is wrong. It's that you are isolated, and you have isolated yourselves, and you acted like these were good things when they happened because people were trying to sell you something and you wanted what they sold. And so you bought it, but what you didn't realize is that you were sacrificing everything and making yourself weak, right? And that's where we're at. And we're all there. I mean, I don't have a huge clan or anything like that. I'm trying to work on that. But it's like, I have a big family, I've had a lot of kids, but it's only one step at a time, because we have to clean up the damage of previous generations, and we will. But we have to know what we're doing and why we're doing it. And the first step, like in alcoholism, is to admit that there's a problem. And the problem is the idea that you're gonna say that you're being empowered while you're stripping away everything that makes you empowered. People say, oh, I'm being empowered. I'm never going to have kids. I won't have any kids. I'm going to live with cats my whole life, but I'm empowered by that. Okay. An isolated person living in an apartment in the middle of New York is empowered, because they can go stop a government if they wanted to, and it's like anybody who's sitting there laughing at that thing, how are you guys going to stop a government? Well, they did at the Bundy Ranch. They have a bunch of tribesmen in Afghanistan just drove off the biggest government in the world, and they live in tribes. They have big families. They protect each other. They watch out for each other. And I'm not supporting any group or anything like that. Don't quote me on that. I'm just saying, that's what happens, is that when you have large networks of people who support you and ride with you and are willing to fight and die for you, that gives you power. And that's it. There's nothing else. Everything else is a lie. All right, so I'm going to sign off with that. Want everybody to know that, we got big things coming up, some books about to be coming out here in the next few months. I'm working really hard on that, and this research we're doing is crazy. So, just keep on the channel. I keep trying to make these videos whenever I can. I'm super busy right now, but everybody have a great day. Thanks for watching. Hail the gods.